But unquestionably, Mohammedans of all ages have believed it and have acted on the belief that when there is actual warfare between a state that holds the faith of Islam and enemies who are of a different creed, it is a holy war and the part of the Muslims. Certain specific texts of the Quran may be cited that appear to some extent to qualify the fierce spirit of authors, but the general tone of the Mohammedan sacred book is eminently warlike and must in the palmy days of Islam have stirred the bold blood of the Turks. Like the sound of a trumpet, the rest fresh cities and provinces for Allah from the Giaur. The Turkish military code breathes the full inspiration of the words of the Prophet. In the shade of the crossing cimeters there is paradise. Every Mohammedan is required to be a soldier. Every soldier killed in battle for the defense of the faith is styled Shahid or martyr, and the Muslim who deserts his post or flies before the foe is held in sin against both God and man. His punishment is death in this world and hellfire in the next. Not long age in India, a question was raised and discussed by various Muslim lawyers which might have had a tremendous result of ourselves. It was nothing less than the question whether Hindustan was a Darul Harb or enemy's country. That is, whether the jihad was in active or potential existence there, and consequently whether or no Muslim could, consistently with their faith, preserve their allegiance to their Christian rulers. The decision was given almost unanimously in favor of peace and submission to the existing rulers, and the chief argument adduced in support of this view is a convincing proof of the truth of Mr. Bosworth Smith's theory that not only is the spirit of Islam favorable to peace and progress, but that such spirit really actuates its professors now. The practice of Muhammad himself was adduced, namely, that when he laid siege to a town or declared war against a tribe or people, he invariably delayed his operations till sunset, that he might ascertain whether the Izan, or call to prayers, was heard amongst them. If it were, he refrained from the attack, maintaining that where the practice of his religion was allowed by the rulers of the place, he had no grievance against them. This one argument, and the fact that the name of our most gracious sovereign is now inserted to the khutbah on Friday, bidding prayer in all mosques throughout India is a sufficient proof that Islam is not antagonistic either to religious or political toleration, and that the doctrine of jihad, a holy war, is not so dangerous or barbarous as generally imagined. No enemy with arms in his hands is entitled to quota, and war is held to make all modes of destruction lawful, captives, women and children, and all that can do Mohammedans no harm, are ordered to be spared. But those among the enemy who from their ability, station, or other causes may hereafter become dangerous to the true believers may be slain. So they have ceased to resist. All cruelty and mutilation are forbidden, and all breach of faith. Capitulations must be observed, and promises to an enemy kept by whomsoever they were given. If the sovereign disapprove of the terms, he must punish his Mohammedan officer who made them. The Turk is never to make a disadvantageous treaty unless when every mode of warfare has been tried and under pressure of the direst necessity. But such a treaty is once made, it is to be kept strictly. In the general view which we have been taking of the Turkish institutions, we have lost sight of the individual Mohammed the Conqueror, but our attention is forcibly recalled to him when we sight on the canons of the Turkish system of government, without notice of which our survey would be incomplete. It is the legislation of imperial fratricide. Mohammed II ordained it by the following part of his institutes. The majority of my jurists have pronounced that that those of my illustrious descendants who ascend the throne may put their brothers to death, in order to secure the repose of the world. It will be their duty to act accordingly. The Ottoman collected the Turkish military and other laws from the Great Ottoman Court. That was compiled and published by the celebrated Turkish jurist Ibrahim Halebi, who died in 1549. But now that Turkey is formally admitted to the public law and system of Europe, see Treaty of Paris, Article 7, she must be considered even more decidedly than before bound to observe the laws of war as generally recognized the civilized nations. I have discussed these laws in Chapter 8 of the first platform of international law. Hmm. Chapter 7. Bayezid II, Prince Jem, Civil War, Adventures and Deeds of Jem in Christendom, First War with Egypt, Bayezid dethroned by his son Selim. On the death of Sultan Mohammed II, a struggle for the sovereignty ensued between his two sons, Prince Bayezid and Prince Jem, in which success rested with the eldest but not the bravest or ablest of the brothers. Both the princes were absent from Constantinople at the time of their father's decease. Prince Bayezid, then aged 35, was at Amasya, the capital of the province which he ruled, and Prince Jem, who was 22 years old, was in Karamania, of which his father had made him governor. Bayezid was of a contemplative, melancholy disposition, simple in his habits, austere in his devotions, fond of poetry and speculative philosophy, whence came the surname of Sophie, the mystic, which is given to him by many of the Ottoman historians. Jem had the energy, the ambition, the love and pomp, and the voluptuousness which had marked his father the conqueror, and without sharing his brother's fondness for metaphysics and abstruse learning, Jem was more eminent even than the other members of his highly gifted family for his love of poetry, and his own poems are ranked among the most beautiful in Turkish literature. On the death of Sultan Mohammed being known in the camp and capital, the Janissaries rose in open anarchy, plundered the halls of the rich Jews, and uttered wealthy inhabitants, and put to death in the Grand Vizier, who had vainly endeavored to disguise from them to the fact of the Sultan's death, as his minister was known to be a supporter of the interests of Prince Jem. The Janissaries were easily led by the adherents of the elder brother to pronounce in favor of Prince Bayezid, and the rest of the army followed their example. Messengers had been dispatched to each prince and their respective partisans in the capital. But the bearer of the important tidings of Prince Jem was waylaid and slain on the road, and Bayezid obtained the inestimable advantage over his competitor of first learning that the throne was vacant, and first reaching Constantinople to claim it. The emissaries appeared before him on his arrival at the capital and asked forgiveness for their late acts of violence. But this formidable suppliant asked it in battle array, and accompanied their petition by a demand for the increase of pay and for a donative on their new sovereign's occasion. Bayezid obeyed all their requests and sent forth the distribution of large sums of money at the commencement of each reign among the Mohammedan praetorians became a regular custom in Turkey. Alike burdensome to the treasury and disgraceful to the Sultan until it was abolished by the Sultan Abdul Hamid during the war with Russia, 300 years after the time of the second Bayezid. Jem was not of a disposition to resign the sovereignty of his brother without a struggle, and remembering the bloody law by which their father had made imperial fratricide a state maxim, the young Ottoman prince may be said to have armed as much for life as for empire. A civil war followed in which the abilities of the veteran Ahmed Gedük, the conqueror of Kaffa and Otranto, and the treachery of some of Jem's principal followers gave the victory of Bayezid. A proposition had been made before the Battle of Jem to his brother to divide the empire, Bayezid taking the European and Jem the Asiatic provinces. Bayezid refused to listen to such a shame, and when the aged Sultana Seljuk Hatun was, who was the daughter of Mohammed I and the great aunt of the two rivers, came to his camp and endeavored to move his fraternal feelings in Jem's favor. Bayezid answered with stern brevity by citing the Arab proverb, "There is no relationship among princes." Nevertheless, the mystic Sultan, so resolute to maintain his rights and to suffer no dismemberment of the Ottoman Empire showed no remorseless eagerness for his brother's death, till after Jem and proved that so long as life was in him, he would strive for a kingly crown at Bayezid's expense. After his first defeat and the dispersion of his army, Jem fled to the dominions of the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, where he was favorably received and sheltered for a year, during which time he visited the holy cities of Medina and Mecca. He and his daughter of Mohammed I are the only members of the Turkish royal family that have made that pilgrimage. In 1482, Jem, assisted by the Egyptian sovereign and some of the malcontent Ottoman commanders in Asia Minor, renewed the war, but was again defeated and forced to seek safety in foreign lands. He did not return to his former protector, but sought the means of passing to the Ottoman dominions in Europe, in the hope of reviving the civil war with effect in that continent, so unsuccessful in the Asiatic, as Prince Musa had done during the interregnum after the defeat of the first Bayezid. With this view, he requested the Grand Master of Rhodes to grant him a temporary shelter and the means of passing into Europe.